Good afternoon, everybody. This is another edition of the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPLA.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. We got a couple announcements going on over the next couple days in regards to sponsors. So it's something exciting that we're going to be talking about pretty shortly. Next couple shows are going to be the last couple shows we're going to be doing from this particular location. We're going to be broadcasting from a different studio starting next week, potentially as early as this weekend. So we'll have to see how that ends up working out. Obviously, lots of stuff going on in the world of baseball, sports, and Unify in America. So please feel free, comment on the Facebook Live feed or the Periscope feed, anything that's going on in your mind and you want to bring up or be part of the show with. If you saw the tease in regards to the stuff going on with the title of the show, we're going to touch on the NFL, which continues to embarrass itself. We're going to talk a little bit about the designated hitter in Major League Baseball. And I'm going to make a different case of why pitchers should still be able to bat in the National League. And I think this is a topic that a lot of people are very passionate about. A lot of people feel that baseball has evolved enough and the ineptness of pitchers hitting in Major League Baseball, it should just be abolished. I'm going to give you a reason why we should keep it going. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about general managers in baseball and how many are in the Hall of Fame and the chance of current general managers that we have in Major League Baseball to get into the Hall of Fame. The first thing I am going to bring up, because I think I feel a need to have to do it, the best wishes possible to New York Mets general manager Sandy Alderson. Obviously, some bad news he got today in regards to finding out that his cancer has come back. And, really a tough situation, because I've said all along that the thing that sucks about cancer, it just has that ability to just come back at any point and impact you in a way where, you may say that you beat it. You may, in certain particular instances, say that cancer is away from you. It's out of your system. No matter what, there's always a chance that it's going to come back. And it likely will at some point. And a lot of people don't like the harshness of saying that, because we always talk about the story as it exists. When somebody, gets cancer, we know they get a large amount of people, their loved ones, their friends, everybody that knows them, gets behind them and supports them, and it becomes a huge battle. A battle that an individual person has, but also a battle that a person's family has. A battle that a person's loved ones and friends and people that are closest to them has. So once the cancer leaves somebody's system, we like to celebrate the victory and say that you, quote unquote, beat cancer. Cancer is undefeated. And unfortunately, people look at it as, hey, beating it once or beating it twice. It still exists in a person's system to a point where it could come back and attack you anytime. It could come back and attack you at any one of a number of speeds and seriousness. And it's for that person who has been diagnosed with cancer, they have to deal with that the rest of their life. And it's not easy. And, listen, we all do a great job in regards to the support that we give, the prayers and everything that's involved with that. But it's just a very scary thing when somebody is diagnosed with cancer, but also when the cancer ends up coming back, because it's something that should be expected to at some point. Unfortunately, it's a matter of when. From the baseball side of it, how does it work for the New York Mets? They have a structure in their front office that I think they're going to be able to get through the rest of this season in, I think, just as good of shape as if Sandy Alderson was able to still make all the decisions and be involved in the day-to-day operations of the team. Unfortunately, it's a season and a team that's in very bad shape. So I think there is some discussion that has to be made from the owners on down in how they want to handle the rest of the season. And obviously, first things first, if nothing else happens, obviously, you hope for the best for Sandy Alderson, and you hope that he's able to beat this vicious, vicious disease, because it's almost undefeated. So you hope he could get through it. He could get the proper treatment. He could get the cancer out of his system, and hopefully he goes on to live a very long life. He's lived for 70 years. Hopefully he can live another 70 more. Now, but how does it apply to the everyday operations of the baseball club? Well, I do think at some point the Mets have to decide how they're going to handle the rest of the season and how they're going to best put themselves into position for the future. Because they're sitting here at, 14 games under 500, 24 games under 500 in their last 62 games. That's a 19-43 record you have to be 24 games under 500 in a 62-game stretch. It's obviously a free fall. It's one of those things that you're on the top of a building, and you may be strapped in with the best harness available, and when you hit the bottom, you're going to be okay, but it's still a free fall. So it's going to be interesting to see, is John Ricco, J.P. Ricciardi, Omar Minaya, are they going to be trusted to make some of the bigger decisions that are going to impact this franchise for the next several years? And it's going to be up probably to the owners. Now, John Ricco, J.P. Ricciardi, Omar Minaya, they could suggest things up to the top. It's going to be up to Jeff and Fred Wilpon to decide if they should take drastic move in regards to upgrade their team at this trading deadline. Should they trade Jacob deGrom? Should they trade Noah Syndergaard? You figure guys like Asdrubal Cabrera and your Jeurys Familia will probably gain some attention from other teams. It would make sense, especially if the Mets continue to lose and there's nothing to play for this season. It would make sense for them to move those guys and try to get some younger chips. But the question is going to be, is the ownership going to give the triumvirate of Ricco, Ricciardi, and Minaya enough autonomy to make decisions that could potentially impact this team for years upon years? And I'm very interested to see how this ends up working out. Obviously, if I could get anything else, the only thing that I'd like to see is for Sandy Alderson to be okay. Because I tell you, it's a battle, when you're talking about cancer and how it impacts people and has taken so many lives of people that we know were taken way too early. It's got a track record. It's almost undefeated. So I'd like to see Sandy Alderson just get back to health. But this is a sports show. And we got to talk about how a team is going to address itself going forward. And I tell you, the New York Mets are in a situation where potentially some of the moves they could make may be unpopular. Some of the moves they could make may put themselves back for the next couple of years. But there may be some moves that have to be made. And once again, this is John Pielli. Just another quick reminder. I want to let you know that in a couple days, we're going to be broadcasting from a different studio with a different setup. I'm excited because we're going to be able to put the banner in full view, and we're going to be able to work a lot of different things in. Actually going to bring in a couch, so we're going to have some people sit down as guests and stuff like that. So definitely excited about some of the stuff we're going to see with the show over the next couple weeks. You look at the National Football League, and first of all, we have a report of a dead body found at the home of Janoris Jenkins, the cornerback for the New York Giants, which is kind of scary. But if you think about it, Jenkins could not have possibly be involved. He was down in Florida working out, so this is probably one of his many homes. He probably has more homes, not just one in New Jersey, but very, sad situation, obviously, with looks like a homicide. And there are stories like this that happen where unfortunately, incidents happen, and this, you could relate it to the player if you want, but in this particular instance, I don't think it's the fault of Janoris Jenkins. Obviously, there's a lot of details that are still available, and we're going to have to wait to see what ends up happening with this. But there was a story out the other day, and this was something that, I end up reading, and I'm just thinking about the National Football League, the way it stands, and the publicity issues that this league has had to deal with. And the fact that, there's this continuous battle that's going on, starting with Colin Kaepernick and the players kneeling for the national anthem, and the owners who kind of want to put a squash to it. They feel like it's doing, a lot to hurt the ratings. And ratings in the National Football League have been down, which is obviously something that's going to upset the owners. But the National Football League, a couple different times, has had a chance to make something positive and to kind of combat the negative image that it has been faced with. So, Laurent Duvernay is offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. Graduated from medical school at McGill University in Montreal. So now he's a doctor. So, from a sport that has had an image problem, that would be considered one of the more positive stories you could bring up. You could talk about a player that, first of all, is getting paid pretty well by the National Football League, probably doesn't have to further his education, even though he knows at some point his career is going to come to an end, but he goes out there and gets his doctorate. And the National Football League ends up embarrassing itself again. And I tell you, this is a terrible job. I mean, all this guy is asking for is you're putting the guy's name on the back of his jersey. Can you put the letters MD after his name? And you know what? There may be some negative ramifications with that. In teams playing each other in battle, let's say the Chiefs are playing the Raiders and things are getting pretty physical and tense, and some players could start talking trash to each other. Maybe, there's some things thrown towards this player that may not be if he didn't have an MD on the back of his jersey. But that's all part of the game. And the National Football League, to decide that, is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is a guy, like I said, that is continuing to further his education as a player in the National Football League. And you're looking at a league that allows players to put junior or senior or the third or the fourth or the 26th that they wanted on the back of their jersey. This is something that is nowhere near what the XFL was doing by allowing players to put whatever they wanted on the back of their jersey. This isn't he hate me. This is a player that is simply asking for something that actually is a part of his name now. It's as much of a part of his name as a junior or senior. It's as much a part of his name as any player that chooses to hyphenate their last name. So you're going to say, is the National Football League going to go out and tell these players, hey, you got to pick one last name, you can't have a hyphenated name? Because it seems like this is the direction that they're going. If you don't allow for MD to be on the back of a player's jersey, you should not allow for junior or senior or the third or 26th or whatever it is that you want to have on the back of your jersey. It should be the player's last name and that's it. And you know what? If the NFL wants to take this a step further, which they're not too far away from doing, by the way. And I'm not saying it's imminent. I'm not saying this is a plan that they end up doing. But, their actions in this particular case would lead for the possibility of players not being able to hyphenate their names on the back of a jersey. Because that's how silly it is. For somebody that has a hyphenated last name for whatever reason, there is no difference in being able to put an MD after somebody's name. And I think that's a terrible job at the NFL and a league that continues in a world of bad publicity to make itself look worse. And I tell you, you know the expression that money is the root of all evil, and how that applies to the National Football League. You look at the owners who are profiting off of this billion-dollar business, and you see so much deviousness and so much negativity and so much bad stuff that's going on in a sport that's had its share of issues, that's had its share of not being able to relate to its own players, who, by the way, are getting paid pretty handsome as well. But when you talk about money being the root of all evil, you should take a moment to look at the state of the National Football League, the state of this league as it stands right now. You got a league that is telling its players that they don't have to come out of the locker room for the national anthem when it's being played. That they could protest, but they're not allowed to protest in front of people. That's taking two sides of the issue and basically telling the league and its fans and the players that nobody cares how you really feel. It's okay to protest, but protest to where we can't see you. And that for those that are on the side or in favor of players standing for the national anthem, or for those that are respecting the national anthem, whether we are, whether we're in the military or involved in the military, or we understand how much the national anthem and what it stands for and what it means for our military, have to look at the fact that players are not going to come out for the national anthem. And I'm not going to say it's neither here nor there on this particular subject. But the bottom line is the national anthem issue in the National Football League has been handled terribly. And it's like every time you hear the NFL speak on this issue, they continue to embarrass themselves. And they embarrass themselves again by not allowing this player to put MD on the back of his jersey. Once again, John Pielli, Passball Show, glad to be with you. Feel free, anything that's on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unified America, please feel free to comment on the Facebook or Periscope live feed. If you are listening on YouTube, it's on demand. So please feel free, send any comments. I get them through email. I try to address everything that anybody brings up over the course of the show. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about a hot topic that exists in Major League Baseball. It's something that I think a lot of people agree that we've kind of grown towards over the last several years. And that's the designated hitter. Ron Blomberg of the New York Yankees, who's been a guest on this show, was the first designated hitter in the American League in 1973. When this hitter, that was essentially a pinch hitter for the pitcher, but could bat multiple times over the course of the game. Now, for those that are hearing those words, you may say, why are you overly simplifying something like that? It's because the definition of what a designated hitter is now was not what the designated hitter was perceived to be in 1973. Pitchers were getting away from having to hit, and they were replaced by qualified hitters. But these hitters, at the time, were considered extra players. They were considered players that probably would not have been good enough to start for a regular team. So you have 8 guys, 1 through 8, and maybe your first guy that comes off your bench, your best pinch hitter, would be considered your designated hitter. So if you're looking at, let's say, the New York Yankees, let's say they don't have a designated hitter now. You would imagine a guy like a Brandon Drury or a Neil Walker being the designated hitter and getting 4 at-bats. If you were the New York Mets, and I understand that their roster is, very barren. There's not a lot of depth there. There's a lot of players that are out injured. You can imagine a guy like Jose Reyes getting those extra at-bats to hit for the pitcher. That's what the designated hitter was several years ago. Of course, over time, teams realized that they were able to use veteran players. Orlando Cepeda was really the first one to stand out. A guy who was probably, from a health standpoint, just about done playing. He couldn't hang around in the field. He couldn't really shag fly balls. He didn't have the ability to move around enough to play the field on a regular basis. So he was getting another opportunity to get 4 at-bats a game and maybe prolong his career. So teams started to use this mentality to get the most out of players. Then other teams would get other players on their team some rest. And then you had the full-time designated hitter, a guy like Edgar Martinez, a guy like David Ortiz. Several other guys in Major League Baseball that end up making a career out of it. Frank Thomas spends the entire second half of his career as a designated hitter. So, you look at the way the sport has evolved, a lot of people believe that we've hit a point, especially with interleague play, that maybe it's time to consider using the designated hitter full-time in a National League. Now, while I will not be against the decision that is made in Major League Baseball, I think it's imminent, unfortunately, and I don't think there's very much that could be done to keep this from happening. Let's look at it the other way. They're never going to get rid of the designated hitter. The DH is going to exist in Major League Baseball forever because the Players Association is going to have a fit. There's guys that make a living. I would guess that the designated hitter is probably one of the more highest paid on an annual value basis positions in all of Major League Baseball. So you're essentially taking jobs away if you take away the DH. So it's not going away. The question is going to be, can there be enough momentum, or can there be enough of a statement to be made that pitchers in the National League should be able to hit? The problem that I have with this, and I know there's a ton of pitchers in Major League Baseball that have experience hitting, and certainly pitchers from generations that have played from years ago when the game was a little different. There is no effort being made to train pitchers to hit in Major League Baseball. And that drives me crazy. I mean, you look at Dellin Betances the other day for the Yankees. First of all, he should not have been allowed to bat in the first place. But he's essentially up there making a mockery out of the whole thing. Like it's, stand-up comedy hour, like he's supposed to get a laugh out of a bunch of his teammates. He's out there trying to help his team win, but he's embarrassing himself at the plate. Not just because he can't hit, but because he's making a complete mockery of the fact that he's got a bat in the first place. Now, the one thing that bothered me about interleague play was situations like this. Because if you happen to come up for the last couple generations as a pitcher in the American League, you understood that you probably weren't going to bat. And if you were, it wasn't going to be very often. It might be in a World Series. It might be in spring training. It might be in that rare situation that the DH ends up being put in the field and then the team ends up losing a DH for the rest of the game. It doesn't happen too often. But now in interleague play, you got American League teams that were still operating themselves the same way as they were years ago, are not training their pitchers to hit. So there's a lot of pitchers that are coming up there in uncomfortable circumstances, probably putting themselves in harm. And obviously any injury that's attributed to a pitcher that's coming up to bat is going to bring out the people that are upset about the designated hitter not existing at all times. What needs to happen is I think baseball should stay status quo. Now, a lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of people believe that it's time. But the reason that people believe that it's time is because Major League Baseball, teams, organizations, the entire sport has not made any effort to try to educate pitchers on how to hit and make a priority for these pitchers that they should go out there and hit and contribute to their team. Now, I remember Eli Grba, former Major League pitcher with the Yankees and the Angels, would talk about the emphasis that the teams that he played for put on hitting and hitting for all their pitchers. Pitchers would have standard batting practice. Pitchers would work on fundamentals, not just throwing a baseball, but running the bases, taking their swings, bunting. This is all stuff that is gone from the game right now. Pitchers from the lowest level, once this talented phenom arm is discovered at whatever level it is, it could be in, junior high school, college. Once it's realized that this pitcher has the ability with his throwing arm to potentially take his talents to the next level, coaches say, don't go up there and bat. We're going to pinch hit for you every time. All you're going to do is throw. No more batting practice. And in all honesty, baseball is responsible for the destruction of its own game in this particular instance. And I understand, if you look at the cumulative batting averages of pitchers in Major League Baseball over the last several years, there's no way I could defend that argument. It's been putrid. It's been terrible. Pitchers coming up to a plate in a Major League Baseball game now is an absolute and utter disaster. It's a free out for the other pitcher. And I hope in a game that continues to one-up itself, when one person, one executive is thinking about ways to try to give themselves a better chance to win than the opposition. Going back from the dead ball days when somebody decided to hit some home runs and how a team could benefit from hitting the ball over the fence, to when one man was strong enough to stand up against segregation and allow for some, whatever insane reason that it wasn't allowed in the first place. Men with darker skin to play on the same field as men with lighter color skin. Which all these years later, I still can't fathom how that would not have been okay at any point. The game has evolved. People are always looking to try to get an advantage over their opposition. If I'm a National League team in Major League Baseball, why am I not implementing from the lowest level of the minor leagues all the way up to the majors, making sure that once I draft a pitcher, he's getting regular at-bats, he's going to the batting cages, he's going to be part of regular batting practice every single day. And you know what? He might be a 100 hitter. But if he could be a 150 hitter for me or a 175 hitter for my organization, that gives my team a better chance to win against the other 14 teams in the National League. It certainly gives myself a very good chance to win when I'm playing against an American League team in my ballpark. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand why nobody has taken this and said, listen, if the pitchers are going to hit, I'm going to make sure that they are prepared to hit. I'm going to demand that they take batting practice. And you know what? If that pitcher doesn't want to take batting practice, I don't want him on my friggin' team. And this allows me to transition to my next point. We talk about the shift in Major League Baseball. We talk about the shift as if somebody is taken for a left-hand batter the whole left side of the field away. Remember when we used to play stickball when we were kids? You didn't have enough players. So we put a fielder out in left field, we put a fielder out in center field, and we'd say, anybody that hits the ball to right field, assuming we're all right-hand batters. If you hit a fly ball to right field, it's an automatic out. It's almost like Major League Baseball players are believing this now. That if they hit the ball where there's nobody at, it's going to be an automatic out. Now, I don't believe so much in the philosophy about bunting. I don't think bunting is as easy as people make it out to be, especially for somebody who is a trained and proven power hitter. I understand you take the bat, you put it in a certain position, you make contact with the ball, and you let it roll and you start running. It doesn't seem to be that easy when you see players try it. So I don't expect somebody who is a genuine power hitter that is known for pulling the ball and that is getting paid to hit a ton of home runs to all of a sudden learn how to execute a perfect bunt. But I will tell you this. When I'm talking about Major League Baseball teams, particularly National League teams, deciding that they're going to give their pitchers more batting practice, that they're going to change from an organizational structure and make sure that their pitchers can hit better than other teams' pitchers, Where is that one out of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball that are saying we are going to implement a philosophy of hitting against the shift? Not necessarily all the time, but we're going to make it a standard rule that if a team shifts against us as a left-hand batter and we're leading off an inning, I'm hitting the ball the other way and attempting to hit against that shift. If there's a runner on third, I'm making sure that my players are hitting against the shift. Where is that team to stand up in a world of analytics that we live in now, where numbers are being thrown all over the place? And we got the brightest executives that exist in the history of the world because they're coming from the most prestigious colleges. A lot of them don't know a thing about baseball, but they know numbers. How come nobody has stepped up and said, we're going to make, as an organizational philosophy, to hit against the shift? And I'm not talking about laying down a bunt. I'm talking about looking for a pitch outside and driving it the other way. You say this is a copycat league. It's more like a handicapped league. You got teams that are deciding to take away a whole side of the field, and you got opposing players that aren't even going to try to combat it. They're going to go out there and still try to hit their home runs. And I'll tell you, the one thing that pisses me off about this whole thing the most is when you got a runner on third, for crying out loud. And you got that shortstop that's on the right side of the field. The third baseman is barely on the left side of the field. That second baseman is in right field. And that runner's standing there at third base. Why the hell is he not stealing home? Especially when a pitcher decides to pitch from the full windup. And if I'm a hitter and I don't make an effort to get that runner in from third, if I hit a friggin' pop-up that goes to second base, he should be fined. If he's making no effort to get that runner in from third, while not even risking getting it out. If you hit a ground ball to the left side of the field, it's a friggin' base hit. It's a damn embarrassment how teams aren't even trying now. They've allowed these sabermetrics to get in their head. And what about the team that does occasionally take advantage of it? If I'm a bad baseball team right now, I'm going from a fundamental standpoint saying, listen, we are going to hit against the shift. If you have a problem scoring runs, hit against the shift. If you have a problem getting guys on base, hit against the shift. It's an embarrassment that more hitters aren't doing it on their own. But I understand. This is a game of greed. Players are getting paid to hit home runs. That left-handed power hitter knows that his next contract isn't going to come from how many singles to left field he has. It's going to come based off the amount of home runs that he hits. And most likely, most of them are going to be to right field and pulled. I get it. But I'm talking about baseball being a team sport, which, by the way, it still is. And for those teams that can't score runs, they are embarrassing themselves by not making any effort to hit against the shift. For those teams that are hitting for lousy batting averages and having a hard time getting people on base, you're embarrassing yourself. And I'm wondering how long Major League Baseball teams are going to continue to embarrass themselves as if it's a universal thing. As if it's expected that every baseball team should act the same way. What happened to the days where everybody was trying to get the most advantage? What about everybody that was playing the gamesmanship? Everybody that was doing everything they possibly can to give them individually an advantage and give their team an advantage against their opposition? And you're going to tell me that in the days of the shift, that there's no Major League Baseball team that's thought about it. To say, hey, let me have my left-hand hitters hit the ball the other way. I mean, I see people in batting practice You could drive the ball the other way in BP. You could pull the ball in BP. If you can't, what's the purpose of batting practice if you can't practice that when you're up at the plate against the major league pitcher? You're going to tell me all of a sudden it's different? The only pitches that a left-hand batter is going to get are low and in? And if I get a ball that's outside, what, am I not allowed to swing at it? If I get a fastball away, the best chance of me getting a hit is for me to poke it the other way. Why aren't teams implementing this as a philosophy? It's a damn embarrassment. And this is a game that you're watching and you're seeing how it's handicapping itself. You're seeing how teams are losing game after game, some of them. But if there's a runner on third and nobody out and the left-hand hitter's up, and you got three infielders on the right side of the field and the third baseman is almost at second base, you got the runner at third that's barely hanging off the base. I'd be halfway home when the pitcher's sitting there in his stretch looking at me. I challenge him to step off. I challenge him to take a run at me. If he runs at me, I'll go back. Maybe I'm far enough down the baseline and I'll start running home. Why is there not more stolen bases of home against the shift? There's a lot of fishy things going on here, and I'm not sure that it's some elaborate plan. I'm not sure baseball is intentionally handicapping itself. I don't think there's some conspiracy involved. I just think that everybody is so obsessed with what the computer-generated report tells them that they've stopped playing the game. Stop playing the game in a way where you try to think of any advantage you can. It's not all about hitting home runs. It's not all about drawing a friggin' walk. How many more base runners would you get if you allowed your left-hand hitters to hit against the shift? If you demanded that the hitters hit against the shift? Pretty similar to what I was saying before about implementing an organizational hitting philosophy for pitchers. If a pitcher doesn't want to hit, you get them the hell off the team. Outside of the one or two star type of players that are going to be hard to approach and hard to give a difficult time to, I tell my left-hand batters, if the defense is shifting against you, you better hit against the shift. We hit the halfway point. Well, probably the three-quarter point of the Pass Ball Show today, because I'll be with you for just a couple more minutes. Once again, we were talking earlier about Sandy Alderson and his unfortunate diagnosis of his cancer coming back, and obviously hope that he gets the proper treatment. He's back on his feet soon. And I started to think of executives in Major League Baseball. You had John Sherholtz a couple of years ago get put into baseball's Hall of Fame. He of the mighty Atlanta Braves, the 14 straight division titles. Did a great job. Obviously, it ties back to the days of the Kansas City Royals where he helped win a World Series championship there. And there's been a series of executives, from Branch Rickey. Many others have done great things with the sport and have been honored with the position and the opportunity to be in baseball's Hall of Fame. And I wasn't thinking in a sentimental feeling when I was talking about Sandy Alderson. Here's a guy that, pretty similar to a Pat Gillick, spent 30, 40 years as an executive in baseball. Is considered revolutionary for some of the things that he's done. His Moneyball mentality ended up being kind of, tripled or quadrupled in force by Billy Beane, who was obviously more known for it, but it came from ideas from Sandy Alderson. I think of a guy like Pat Gillick, who obviously led the Toronto Blue Jays to some prominence, involved himself with a handful of other organizations, Seattle Mariners, Philadelphia Phillies, amongst other teams, Baltimore Orioles. Was considered one of the better executives in baseball. Now, I think it would be a little bit far-fetched to say Sandy Alderson is a Hall of Famer. I think maybe if he won a World Series with the Mets, he may feel a little bit different. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, even if he comes back to full health and is ready next year. But I think of executives in Major League Baseball, and I wonder how many general managers are on their way to the Hall of Fame. In other words, Billy Beane, Sandy Alderson's protege, because of his impact on baseball, because there was a book and a movie written about his philosophies, does Billy Beane end up getting into baseball's Hall of Fame? I look at a guy like Brian Sabean. He's involved with the Giants for many years, but led his team to 3 World Series championships. Brian Cashman with the New York Yankees, responsible for 5 World Series championships. Are they shoo-ins? When their executive careers are over, are they going to get the call and respect that they deserve? You don't see it happen too much in baseball. There's only a handful of executives and general managers that have been rewarded with baseball's highest honor. And I wonder how that applies to the game today. Is Brian Cashman a no-doubt Hall of Famer? If he is, not a lot of people are talking about it. And obviously a person that has been involved in a major market like New York, a team like the Yankees, who have been known for many, many years to not want to hold on to their general managers and their managers for very long. In other words, you don't have much of a chance to screw up. You better succeed right away. Brian Cashman has done that. So do we mention him with the respect that we should be giving him? Future Hall of Fame general manager, Brian Cashman. Jeff Luhnow with the Houston Astros is known for what he has done with that Houston Astros ball club. And obviously a lot of executives have copycatted his philosophy. And obviously a lot will have to do with how much the Houston Astros win. Was last year in 2017 the first of several World Series championships that this organization and this team will win. We'll see. How much more do they have to win before Jeff Luhnow is thought of as a Hall of Fame executive? But I'll leave you on that. I'll be back with you tomorrow. This is the Pass Ball Show brought to you by JohnPLA.com. A little bit of a recap. The NFL's latest mistake, not allowing that player to put an MD on the back of his jersey, was an absolute embarrassment. Best wishes to Sandy Alderson. Hopefully he recovers very soon. No DH in the National League. Hitting against the shift. GM's in the Hall of Fame. We'll be back with you tomorrow. This is the Pass Ball Show brought to you by JohnPLA.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.